Welcome everyone to our weekly live Q&A. Feel free to throw your questions in the chat and I'll answer them as I see them come up. If you're catching us on the replay or our YouTube video, feel free to throw your questions in the comments. If it's a quick response, I'll respond in the comments. Otherwise, I will focus that on our topic in the following week. So what I wanted to focus on today, based upon some conversations, things that have come up, we're kind of hitting that end of program breaking point for a lot of people. So we're coming up on the end of 6-week challenges, 60-day challenges, 75 hard. All of those between last week and probably the next 2 weeks, we're hitting the end point for those programs if you started it for your New Year's resolution. And typically, most people are landing in one of 4 groups. The first one's probably the smallest position, a group and percentage. You did really great, no real problems, came up during your program, and you seen great results, and you can keep going with the plan without any issues. That's awesome. Again, you're probably one of the smaller percentages in there. The rest of this video is probably not going to apply to you, so feel free to skip. Or if you have some friends who aren't in the same boat as you, feel free to listen. We're going to go over some tips for them. Second group, you did good. You got some results, but you're really not looking forward to continuing with the plan, whether it be the intensity of the workouts, the restriction of the diet, or some combination thereof. And the frustration that you're running into is, if you go back to the way you were doing things, the weight's just going to come on. So you're kind of stuck in this position of, I don't want to keep this going, but I don't want to go back to the way things were. And a lot of these programs don't provide a good guidance on that middle ground on how do I maintain this. It's a common area. You're not alone. Don't worry about that. Our third group, it was kind of a constant struggle the whole way. Even despite of the struggle, you've still seen some results, but because of how hard everything was and how often you felt that you fell short of following the diet or meeting the exercise requirements, you just feel defeated and like you didn't succeed, even though you have accomplished some good results along the way. Our last group is someone who it's just been nothing but struggle, nothing but challenges trying to follow through with what the program requires. And really, you've just spent the whole time wondering why you even started with this. You haven't seen results. The whole thing's just been challenging. And you're just waiting for the time to be done. None of these are uncommon. Like I said, they're the 4 main things that people happen. The first group is probably the smallest percentage. Everyone else usually falls into one of the remaining 3. So the things that you want to look at and understand that severe dieting, severe restrictive calorie restriction, elimination of food groups and things like that, there's going to be a cutoff point. It's very common to run into what we call diet fatigue for people who are doing very restrictive diets. And that's usually going to come up around the week 6 to 8 mark for most people. What you want to look at that point is we want to kind of get you back up to a maintenance intake of calories to give you a little more space, more room. You can still stay as far as the guidelines of the diet if you don't mind what it is. You can keep the restrictions, but just add more calories, maintain your weight for usually around 2 to 4 weeks. We want to maintain, and then we kind of reassess based upon where's your mindset at, how are you feeling with the food? Are we in a position where we can start restricting again if you need to keep going with weight loss? If after that time nothing's wrong and you're feeling pretty good and you're happy with where you're at, just maintain at that point. Other aspects that you can look at, if we're going to increase our calories a little bit, you can go to return to somewhat normal eating before. So if you were restricting a lot of types of foods, food groups, and things of that nature, you can look at putting some of those in moderate servings with those extra calories. Um, Keeping in mind that long-term weight loss, so let's say if you are someone who started the year and you've got a 30, 50, 60 plus pound weight loss goal, at this stage, maybe you've only lost 10 or 20 pounds. That's anywhere from normal to really good, to be honest. So don't feel like you didn't get there. 10 to 20 pounds in the first 6 weeks is amazing results. You're going to need some time to let your body recalibrate, reset, accept the new weight that you've lost as your maintenance level. That's the reason why it takes about 2 to 4 weeks to kind of rebalance. Then it's okay to start restricting calories again. What we don't want to run into is continuous restriction for 16, 20, 30 plus weeks in a row. It really disrupts your headspace, but it also disrupts metabolically and can start causing more problems than it's helping with that fat loss. So it's okay to reset, rebalance, get back to maintenance for a couple weeks, get your head clear, because trying to fight that restriction for long periods of time is not a healthy thing. So we want to get you back up to maintenance. Like I said, usually about 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how long you've been able to maintain the diet. If you're on the 6 to 8 week end of dieting, 2 weeks is probably all you need. If you're at the 12 to 16 weeks that you've kept it up, you're probably going to need 4 weeks to kind of rebalance yourself. Again, at that point, then we reassess, okay, let's start cutting again, focusing on fat loss. You're still going to do your workouts. Maybe we back off the intensity and the loading to let the joints and the what we call systemic fatigue kind of reset as well. That way, we're not hitting a huge fatigue point where, if you're hitting hard 4 or 5 days a week, or even 3 times a week, if it's intense and long enough, you're going to hit a point where we've stressed the body so much that we're going to start seeing negative stress effects, whether it be an injury, whether it just still starts to ache and pain more than it ever did before. Those are signs that we're hitting that systemic fatigue where the body's so stressed that inflammation is just the automatic response whenever we go to activate the body in an intense way. So backing off a little bit, you still do some workouts, but we do lighter loads, more repetitions to still get some work, but we're not pounding, we're not beating up, we're not taking everything to complete failure during these couple weeks while we let the body kind of reset. That's the other benefit of bringing the calories back up, because systemic fatigue from intensity of workout and then fatigue from being under a calorie restriction really starts to cause a lot of physiological stress. So backing off on the deficit do we get back to maintenance, backing off on the beat down of the workout lets everything reset, lets you feel more refreshed. Once you feel your energy and everything's back up and everything joint-wise, inflammation-wise feels better, then we can go back into upping the intensity if need be. If you, at the end of your program, you've met your goal, we can come back up to maintenance, and then we want to kind of look at, okay, how restrictive was the diet? Was it just a severe calorie restriction, or did it eliminate a lot of foods that I don't want to keep eliminated forever? From that point, if it's just a caloric restriction issue, bring your calories up, maintain, you're good to go. If it's these foods were cut out and I don't want them cut out forever, assess what and how you want to put them back in with a plan. The big factor that gets people in trouble is they finish the diet and just go kind of hog wild with everything. And that's when we see the weight really start to jump way back up. Whereas if you just have a plan of, okay, maybe the diet restricted a lot of carbohydrates, I'm going to have some of them back in again as part of my calorie boost to maintenance, but keeping the portions moderated, keeping things to around a cup with any one meal instead of just loading your plate down with it every time you sit down. Those are little ways that you can still have the foods without getting too excessive with it too soon. And it'll be important with some of these diets that eliminated food types. If you've noticed some things beyond the weight loss, maybe your brain fog wasn't there, maybe things didn't ache as much, maybe your digestion improved. Be mindful as you reintroduce foods that you eliminated back into your diet if those things come back. So if you introduce, let's just an example, maybe you cut out bread and you start having bread again and you start noticing that your digestion has more disruptions, or things tend to feel more achy and stiff, or brain fog comes in, you may want to look at keeping bread eliminated because it's causing some sort of sensitivity reaction. And that goes with any type of food that you eliminated. If you bring it back in and start noticing major effects, be mindful that it may be something that you want to take into consideration. If things are more severe than just moderate symptoms, I would recommend talking with a food allergy specialist, because that may be something that is affecting you. And it's important to know that as you start introducing other foods back in, so we don't have any severe reactions. It's also another reason why, if you have eliminated a lot of foods, you've felt a lot of changes in the positive way, only introducing one type of food back at a time so you can truly track what impact it's having. So rather than putting back in all carbohydrates in the first week, choose one type, whether it be just breads, maybe it's just pasta, just rice, whatever it may be. That way, if you do have any symptoms that are undesirable, you can kind of pinpoint, well, it came when I introduced this specific food back in. Then you can assess whether or not you want to keep it eliminated. Sometimes it's just a simple matter of reintroducing it because you haven't had it in a while. There might be some upset, but if you notice, every time I have this, it's causing it, and sometimes over time it's getting worse, that's a sign that we may want to keep it out of your diet to eliminate that food sensitivity. And like I said, if you do notice more severe, meeting with a food allergy specialist would probably be a very good idea, just to see what else you're sensitive to keep other problems from coming up. Because that may have been one of the reasons why you felt chronic stiffness, chronic aches, the brain fog, unexplained congestion, things of that nature. If it starts coming back as you reintroduce those foods that you eliminated, that's a big indicator that you have some food sensitivities, some mild allergy response potentially. And I would recommend getting that checked out, because that has a big impact on other aspects of health. Because anything that's increasing types of inflammation can create other health risks. Because inflammation, obviously we know about joint inflammation, but if we have inflammation, that usually means we've got bloodstream inflammation, and that can create cardiovascular risks that we want to avoid. So if you notice those coming back, get checked, get tested, just to see what you truly are reactive to, because it may be things that we want or need to keep eliminated for other health concerns and just your general comfort. So things to be mindful of with working out. If you've hit a point where you're at your goal as far as your physique, your weight, everything that you wanted to accomplish, we still need to do some strength training to sustain what you've developed. Because if you stop altogether, you're going to start losing the muscle, because your body follows kind of a use it or lose it plan. So if you completely stop training, over the next few weeks, your body will start getting rid of some of the muscle that you've developed during your workout plan. So that being said, it doesn't have to be at the same intensity that you did during your program to get your results to where you wanted it to be. We just need a frequency of stimulus, and that's 2-3 times a week is really all that's needed to stimulate the muscle enough to tell the body, no, this needs to stay here because we're demanded on a frequent enough basis. That will help sustain your metabolism. It'll sustain your physique. So you're not losing muscle mass, so your shape and tonality will stay. And those two together will help keep body fat from creeping back up on you, especially if you pair that with just daily movement. And again, daily movement doesn't have to be intense cardio. It just means go move your body 30 minutes. If you've already been doing 30 minutes of intensity, going for a 30-minute walk is going to feel great by comparison. But it doesn't have to be that. It's just moving your body every day, 30 minutes. It's going to help in aspects of weight control, heart health, cardiovascular work, lung health, everything that we want it to. Again, once you're at your goal, we don't have to stay at the same intensity unless there's new goals that you're aspiring to get to now that you've accomplished that first level. But don't feel like, oh God, I got to keep beating myself up 5 days a week for the rest of my life. It's not the case. 2 to 3 times a week, moderate is more than enough to maintain and sustain what you've got, and maybe even see some more development, especially if we get our calories back up. Because if you're not in a constant deficit, it's easier for your body to build and repair muscle tissue. So you may actually see more results in that sense as well. So just a few things to be mindful of. If you do find yourself still struggling and you need additional help, feel free, reach out. We'll set up a call, discuss what your challenges are, and try and help you get a better set of action plan to go forward with that. Until next week, have a great one, and remember to stay persistent in your consistent pursuit of health.